Chapter 92, There is Rain in the Crown Ceremony. There is a hint of danger in these words. Xiao Shu and Yan Lin looked at each other. The crowd was inexplicably frightened, but it was difficult to understand the unknown reason for this, so they only looked at them. Fortunately, at this time, the voice of the butler came from behind, and he was speaking to another person. The crown ceremony is set at the beginning of noon, and the banquet is held in the front hall, and now that many guests have arrived, it is just right for the young master to go at this time. Xie Wei came back from Chengqing Hall. His figure turned up from behind the door, his face seemed a little paler than when he went, and when he returned to the hallway, he looked up and saw everyone, and only asked, "Why don't you go to the front hall?" Yan Lin closed the sword box, bowed his hand to Xie Wei, and said, "Let's go." Xie Wei's gaze swept over everyone, and when he saw Xiao Shu, he didn't see anything, but when he saw Xiao Ye, he paused for a moment, and then followed the butler straight from the corridor to the front hall. The tense atmosphere that had permeated the outside of Qingyu Hall had been dispelled a lot. King Yanping immediately took the opportunity to laugh and said, "On this good day, why should everyone be so angry? It's all a small matter, let's go to the front hall. I don't dare to let Mr. Xia and so many guests wait for a long time." Xiao Ye snorted heavily, sneered and turned around. Although Xiao Shu had a look of concern on her face, she didn't seem to have the intention of delving into it. She only bowed to Yan Lin's seemingly polite body, and also went with Xiao Ye. With King Yanping laughing and easing the atmosphere, and the Xiao brothers and sisters left, everyone finally relaxed and went to the front hall one after another. Yan Lin fell last, and Zhang Xuning walked in front. It's just that when he was about to leave Qingyu Hall, he suddenly lowered his voice and called, "Ning Ning." Zhang Xuning's body shook slightly, and her footsteps stopped. She turned to look at him. The young man glanced at the people walking far ahead, then came to her, smiled at her, took out the palm behind his back, and threw a heavy bag containing something at her. "For you." Zhang Xuning subconsciously reached out to catch it. King Yanping, who was walking in front, suddenly found that there was no one missing, so he couldn't help but look back and shouted to him from afar, "Yan Lin, what are you doing?" Yan Lin raised his head and said, "It's here." He lowered his head and looked at Zhang Xuning again. The corners of his mouth were crooked, but there was a little more misty melancholy in his eyes, and he said softly, "It's a pity that there is no chicken head rice at this time." After speaking, he walked to the front first, and followed the king of Yanping and the others in front. Zhang Xuning stood in place and gently opened the bag. Inside is a small bag of fried pine nuts that have been peeled. As always, she seemed to be able to see the young man jumping down from under the high courtyard wall of Jiang's mansion, sitting casually in front of her window with his long legs stretched, and putting a small bag of peeled pine nuts in front of her. Looking up, the young man's back is still upright, but for example, in those days, he has become a little more heavy and calm. Zhang Xuning couldn't help but sigh softly, and at the end, she laughed heartily for some reason. The clouds in the sky surged, the wind blew the flat lake, and when the ripples rose, the koi at the bottom kissed the surface of the water. "It looks like it's going to rain." She carefully refastened the small bag of pine nuts before heading forward.
星号
In the water pavilion, most of the people have already left. When the sky outside was overcast, Zhang Sha's footsteps stopped in front of the railing, and looked outside. When Chen Ying saw it, he couldn't help but stop. This director of the Qing officials division, who was transferred from the criminal division to the criminal department, was a very strange person in Chen Ying's impression. He was not keen on those contacts in the officialdom, and he only got together with his colleagues a few times, and he just came to show up and left. Conscientious, but not learned. Most of the time he doesn't speak, and only when he investigates a crime or interrogates a prisoner, but even when he speaks, he seems silent. Such a person is like a calm sea, and under his bleak countenance, he always gives people the feeling that he is covered with many things, not deliberately hidden, but he may not be used to expressing it, and he is unwilling to confide in it. Zheng Shangju, the original criminal department, angered the saint because he spoke for the Yanji Marquis mansion, and was ordered to leave his post early and return to his hometown by a holy decree of the Holy Mountain. And Zhang Sha's bowl is Gu Chunfang. Chen Ying's eyes flashed slightly, and he pondered in his heart, but he felt that this was an excellent opportunity, so he walked to Zhang Shao's side with a smile and said, "What are you looking at if Master Zhang is not leaving?" Zhang Sha glanced back at him. His expression was neither fearful nor warm, still light, but said, "It's going to rain." Chen Ying felt inexplicable. He wanted to say that it was a big deal to rain next. It rained every day during the rainy season in Jiangnan, but as soon as the words came out, it became, on weekdays, I look at Mr. Zhang's words and few words, it seems to be quite dull, but I didn't expect that there was such a yaxing. I think it is a real inner show. No wonder Lord Gu was able to see you with discernment, it is really admirable. Zhang Sha said, the people who are reckless and dull under the official have to be given up by the old man Gu, and they have been cultivated hard to get to where they are today, but they are just a petty official, and Lord Chen is serious. Chen Ying hurriedly waved his hand. Where? There were only two of them left in the water pavilion, and even their voices seemed empty. Chen Ying also stood next to him and looked at the surging clouds outside the sky, and only said, Lord Zheng bluntly said that he lost his official position and was sent back to retirement by the saint. Lord Gu Chunfang will be in office soon, and Chen has also heard of Lord Gu's reputation for a long time, but he has not had the opportunity to see Lord Gu because he has been serving outside. Director Zhang served under Master Gu in the old days, so he was quite important, and when Lord Gu returned to Beijing, he would have to rely on Director Zhang to introduce one or two to Chen. To tell the truth, in today's criminal department, everyone wants to talk to Zhang Sha. However, Zhang Sha is a stuffy gourd, and it is not easy to talk to him at first glance. Everyone wanted to slap him, or knew Gu Chunfang's habits through him, but they always felt a headache when they were covered by Zhang Sha, and secretly didn't know how many times they scolded the person who didn't eat the oil and salt and didn't say a word for a long time. Chen Ying's meaning has been made very clear. He wanted to meet Gu Chunfang in advance, hoping to be introduced by Zhang Sha, an old acquaintance, so that even if Gu Chunfang was upright, he would not refuse. How to say that he is also the peak of Zhang Sha, different from others? He felt that Zhang Sha was unwilling to agree, and it was difficult to refuse. Unexpectedly, Zhang Sha said calmly, after Lord Gu arrives, I will see myself, so why do I need Zhang's recommendation? Chen Ying almost didn't choke to death. The smirk he had always put on his face was a little untenable, and his eyelids jumped before he could barely come up with a sentence that could bring the embarrassment over, but when he looked up and was about to speak, he saw a pretty figure walking on the corridor in front of him, so he raised his eyebrows suddenly, and forgot what he was going to say. That girl Chen Ying has seen it. Not so long ago, in the Sinning Palace. One of the companions of Shen Zai, the eldest princess of Liang, the protagonist of the time when Yang's his eye was checked, is also. The crown prince and the Prince Ye Wei greeted the one who asked him to protect him. Because of the delay of the small bag of pine nuts, Zhang Xuning fell behind everyone, but she didn't want to be too late, so she simply wore a shortcut next to her. Unexpectedly, there were people on the water pavilion. She saw the figure from a distance, and her heart was already jumping, and when she got closer and saw that it was indeed him, the faint joy would quietly swing in her heart. At this time, Zhang Sha also saw her. The eyes are facing each other. Zhang Sha lightly closed his eyes, but Zhang Xuning looked at him, and after a while, he turned his eyes to Chen Ying, and bowed to the two of them. I've seen Lord Chen, Master Zhang. When she bowed, she rested one hand lightly on her waist. The snow-white slender wrist was slightly exposed. Zhang Sha's lowered gaze fell on her, and at a glance he saw the scratch that was not obvious, with a faint color of blood, and the overlapping hands covered by the wide-sleeved robe, so he clenched it gently. His mind fluctuated a little, and he didn't speak. Chen Ying smiled at Zhang Xuning. Second Miss Zhang is also here. Have you ever seen young Master Xie? Zhang Sha didn't say anything, and Zhang Xuning was a little disappointed. But after thinking about it, they didn't know each other well now, and Zhang Sharon really didn't talk much, so he quickly put on a smile again, and replied to Chen Ying, Mr. Xie went to see Master Ho, and he had already gone to the front hall just now. Chen Ying said, oh, a dignified third-grade official of the imperial court, with the same official position as Zhang Xunning's father, but he was kind and easygoing to Zhang Xuning, and said, thank you Zhang's second girl for telling me. I was thinking about not finding Mr. Xie, so I will go with Master Zhang in a while. Does Chen Ying have a good relationship with Xie Wei? Zhang Xuning had a suspicious shadow in her heart, and glanced at Zhang Sha again, but the dead face turned her head to look at the fish in the water and the ripples blown by the wind. She felt inexplicably depressed, so she said, then I'll go first. Two adults, say goodbye. Until she walked away, Zhang Sha couldn't help but didn't look back. Chen Ying watched her figure disappear before she withdrew her gaze. Her eyes revealed a bit of interest, and she only turned her head to Zhang Sha and quipped, how can I look at this young lady Jiao and look at you more than once? In the end, it was you who solved her crisis in Sinning Palace that day, and it can be regarded as saving beauty. It seems to be a little interesting to you. Zhang Sha lowered his eyes. Lord Chen laughed. Chen Ying shrugged his shoulders, but he thought of something else, and said to himself, yes, after all, it is Mr. Xie who opens his mouth to protect. Where can he get someone else? Something suddenly tightened in Zhang Sha's heart, and he slowly turned his head to look at Chen Ying. Chen Ying only said, what? Zhang Sha closed his eyes slightly and said, it's nothing. Chen Ying's mind had already shifted to seeing what Xie Wei said for a while, but he didn't notice that he had some obvious abnormalities at the moment, just pondered, young Master Xie is really an incomprehensible person, although he can be regarded as having some intersections with him, but he always feels that he is not deep. However, it is also very strange to say that although Director Zhang is not the same as Mr. Xie, it also gives Chen a feeling that he can't see through or understand. You said that you don't love beauties, and you don't go to the Qinlichu Pavilion when others tell you to go, and you don't love fancy clothes and food, and you live alone and live in simplicity all day long. It's really confusing. Chen doesn't quite understand. Where is the ambition of a person like Director Zhang? Rustling, the rain falls. The mist was like a light veil, covering the surface of the lake and the pavilions, and suddenly the whole world was quiet, full of a hazy beauty. Zhang Sha looked up. After a long time, even Chen Ying thought that he would not answer this question if he was distracted, so he opened his mouth like an unprecedented, and said slowly, the ambition is not high, and the direction is not far. Distinguish innocence, serve your loved ones, get a corner, and watch the rain. That's it.